Welcome. Our mission today, as always, is a clear, factual deep dive. We're looking into the security and political landscape of the Sahel region.
Indeed.
This past week, specifically, the area covering Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and northern Nigeria saw quite a convergence of crises, really demonstrating some significant challenges to state control.
That's right. We'll be analyzing these events with the, let's say, composure and critical eye needed to really understand the implications.
And the reports we've synthesized for you, well, they reflect intense pressure points.
Not just on the battlefield, but also right within the capitals, impacting supply chains across these nations.
We'll pull together reports from governments, the military, and crucially, also look at public sentiment that's gleaned from social media analysis, trying to give you that full picture.
Exactly. Get a sense of the ground truth.
Now, before we dig into the details, this deep dive on current events is brought to you by ProWave AI.
And this detailed intelligence brief is generated by Stylo News, the AI-powered news application. It processes hundreds of global sources in real time to deliver critical analysis directly to you.
Okay, so let's begin with perhaps the most immediate flashpoint from this week. A very high-profile kidnapping right in Niger's capital, Niamey.
Yes, Kevin Rideout, an American missionary and also a pilot. He was abducted on the night of October 22nd, 2025, right from his home.
And the location is what's really quite stunning here.
It is. His residence apparently was situated only about 100 yards from Niger's presidential palace.
Yes.
I mean, supposedly a fortress of state security.
Right.
So this abduction, carried out by 3 armed men, well, it immediately heightened fear among the entire expatriate community and Niamey residents, too.
It feels like more than just a security failure. It's almost a symbolic slap in the face to the military junta that's currently holding power there.
Absolutely. That proximity, as you said, to the presidential palace, it really tells you a lot about the weakening control the junta has, perhaps even over its own capital. And the tactical details, well, they're critical, too. Rideout's phone was last tracked moving northwards, towards the Tillaberi region.
Which is known territory for certain groups.
Precisely. An area known for severe instability and activity by the Islamic State's Sahel province, or ISSP. Now, sources are still assessing the exact perpetrators.
So it could be ISSP directly or perhaps something else.
It could be. Was this a direct action by ISSP jihadists, or was it maybe a ransom-driven operation by local gangs, aiming perhaps to sell the victim onto a major militant group later?
A grim possibility.
Regardless, the U.S. State Department is actively collaborating with Nigerian authorities. This is clearly a high-priority diplomatic matter now, and the U.S. Embassy has issued a heightened risk alert for its citizens.
Now, while that kidnapping of Kevin Rideout shows this sort of high-stakes, terror-gripping Niamey right now, we also saw a reminder this week of the complex, almost transactional economy around hostage-taking in the region.
Yes, that's true. There was that small piece of positive news concerning the release of Commandant Amadou Torda. He was the Bilma prefect.
Right.
And 4 other men were released with him in Niger. They'd been held since mid-2024 by an opposition group, the Front Patriotique pour la Justice, or FPJ.
So quite a contrast there.
It is illuminating, isn't it? You have this outright terror, seemingly aimed at destabilizing the capital itself, and then you have these more localized, maybe political and certainly transactional hostage situations.
It really underscores that armed groups in the Sahel aren't a monolith.
Exactly. They operate across a whole spectrum of goals, from resource extraction right through to political opposition.
Which brings us quite neatly, actually, to the deepening security and governance crisis that's taking shape next door in Mali.
Yes, Mali. The government there was forced to announce a highly disruptive measure this week, a nationwide suspension of classes in schools and universities.
Nationwide? That's drastic.
It is, effective immediately, and it's set to last until November 10th.
And the cause?
Well, this is a direct consequence of a catastrophic national fuel shortage. The cause is a long-standing blockade on fuel imports. It's been enforced since early September by the major al-Qaeda-affiliated militant group, Jama'at Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, JNM, as we often call it.
Just think of the sheer power demonstrated there. Hundreds of fuel trucks stranded at the border.
And the government is forced to shut down its entire education system as a result.
It's a profound demonstration of militant capacity, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's already exacerbated Mali's economic fragility. You're seeing extremely long fuel queues in Bamako, rising commodity prices.
The pressure on the Malian military junta must be immense. The militants are proving they can disrupt the state's critical operations perhaps more effectively than direct military opposition might.
But here's where it gets particularly interesting for you, the listener. J&M isn't just disrupting things. They seem to be actively replacing the state in certain areas.
Replacing the state, how so?
Well, sources indicate the group is consolidating control by leveraging illicit economies. We're talking fuel, motorcycles, even artisanal gold mining to impose taxes and, crucially, to provide localized governance structures.
So what does that localized governance actually look like in practice? Are they, fixing roads or distributing aid?
It's more about providing order where the state is absent. They impose taxes, which of course sounds coercive, but in return, they offer a semblance of security, maybe arbitration of local disputes.
So they're filling a vacuum.
Precisely. This economic infiltration and the provision of basic services, it directly challenges the legitimacy of the Malian state, perhaps far more effectively than traditional military conflict could. They're sort of gaining a social contract through these illicit economies.
And as if that internal pressure wasn't enough for Mali.
No. They're also dealing with severe natural challenges. Heavy rains and dam water releases recently resulted in severe flooding. Reports indicate 28 deaths and over 20,000 people displaced. Now, when a state is already crippled by militants and an economic blockade, well, responding to mass humanitarian displacement becomes nearly impossible.
A truly dire situation. Okay, let's zoom out now and look at the regional response, or lack thereof, perhaps. We should examine the Alliance of Sahel States, the AES. That's the military juntas of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso.
Yes, they continue their efforts to assert sovereignty. They're formalizing their integrated force unifié and advocating for regional security autonomy at events like the recent Forum of Aswan.
There seems to be an immediate challenge to this solidarity.
Painfully visible, yes. Malian sources have actually publicly criticized Niger and Burkina Faso for showing, quote, limited visible support during Mali's recent fuel and hydrological crises.
Right. So if the AES can't offer visible solidarity during a non-military crisis, like a fuel blockade, well, how credible is their integrated force unifié going to be against a major military threat?
It raises serious questions. The gap between the rhetoric of unity and the reality of, perhaps, internal political considerations seems quite vast.
Meanwhile, you have Burkina Faso navigating its own set of, well, contradictory policies, it seems.
It does look that way. On one hand, the government arrested 8 humanitarian workers from the International NGO Safety Organization, INSO, on espionage charges. That certainly reflects an anti-Western suspicion.
Right.
But on the other hand, they're trying to plan for the future. They just launched the National Forum on Scientific Research and Technological Innovations, FRS 8 2025, aiming to push for long-term development.
It's a complex balancing act, and all of this internal behavior is happening against the backdrop of a major geopolitical pivot in the region.
A very significant one. Western military forces are drawing down across the Sahel, and that's creating a substantial security vacuum.
And Russia appears to be stepping in.
Rapidly expanding its footprint to fill that void, yes. This involves the deployment of Russian mercenaries. Those sources suggest they're often focused more on resource extraction, particularly securing gold and mineral routes, than on, say, comprehensive security stabilization.
So security, but with an economic motive.
Potentially, yes. And they're also establishing new diplomatic and cultural ties, promoting concepts like justice energy, offering cooperation on nuclear development with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso.
Interesting. Okay, let's turn our attention now to Nigeria, which executed a massive internal security overhaul this past week.
Yes, quite significant. President Bola Tinubu approved a comprehensive replacement of his top military leaders, taking the Chief of Defense Staff and the heads of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. All changed.
And this followed circulating rumors of a possible coup attempt.
That's right, though those rumors were officially denied by the government. But the timing is notable. The stated goal is clear: to immediately strengthen security against persistent threats, including the resurgence of Boko Haram and organized banditry.
So, is this sudden change in leadership likely to be enough, especially considering the evolving tactics we're seeing from insurgent groups in northern Nigeria?
That really is the critical question, isn't it? And what's truly concerning is the increasing sophistication level. The governor of Borno State recently confirmed that Boko Haram is escalating its insurgency by employing sophisticated drone technology.
Drones for surveillance and attacks.
Exactly. This introduces an entirely new dimension to the conflict, and it's forcing Nigeria to adapt very rapidly. Their immediate response seems to be increasing regional cooperation, notably forming a united front against terrorism with Somalia, interestingly enough.
Okay. And just briefly, before we move to perspectives, there's also a challenge to international norms coming from Southern Africa.
Yes, South Africa is currently facing accusations of violating its own laws, apparently by exporting arms to military regimes in countries facing human rights accusations. Specifically, Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Gabon were named.
And that risks undermining wider efforts.
Well, it certainly risks undermining global efforts to foster peace and accountability in these already volatile regions.
All right. As we transition now into the decision-maker perspectives, let's try and summarize the opposing strategic outlooks held by the key actors here.
Okay, so first, from the perspective of the AES juntas, that's Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the strategy seems primarily defined by security first.
Right.
They're prioritizing military control, regional sovereignty, and actively pursuing these new security partnerships, relying quite heavily on Russia, it seems, to replace those departing Western forces.
Okay. And then conversely, what about regional bodies like ECOWAS and the African Union?
Well, they maintain a strong, publicly stated zero-tolerance stance for unconstitutional changes of government. They utilize pressure, often sanctions, aiming to restore democratic governance.
So essentially refusing to legitimize the military regimes.
That's the approach. Even if that stance risks, continued regional instability in the short term, it's a principled stand against coups.
Meanwhile, international partners like the U.S. and the UN, what's their focus?
Their focus seems to be twofold. Firstly, immediate safety concerns, like working to secure the release of the kidnapped American missionary in Niger.
Understandable.
And secondly, advocating for security support, yes, but crucially paired with integrated development and governance programs, trying to address those deep socioeconomic root causes of instability.
So pairing the security response with longer-term fixes.
Exactly. They want a more holistic approach.
Now, how can we connect these sort of formal policies to the public pulse? What's the consensus from social media, from X across these Sahel states?
Well, the analysis of public sentiment is quite striking, actually.
In what way?
The dominant mood is overwhelmingly negative. We're seeing averages between 60% and even 80% negative sentiment across the region.
That's very high. What are people expressing?
Deep fear, frustration, and often outrage over the escalating terror, perceived military ineffectiveness, and sometimes alleged abuses by security forces.
And what about diplomacy efforts, like from ECOWAS?
Specifically, those efforts are frequently labeled by users online as, well, toothless, or simply ineffective against the immediate threat of extremism that they face daily. They don't see it making a difference on the ground.
Are there any positive notes at all in the sentiment analysis?
They are rare and usually quite localized, typically tied to specific reported military successes against insurgents, or, interestingly, sometimes linked to social policy.
Social policy.
Yes. For example, we saw some positive spikes in sentiment linked to Niger's historic 40% minimum wage increase. And that was enacted by the government, presumably to tangibly improve workers' living standards, perhaps a nod to the need for governance beyond just security measures.
Interesting. Okay, looking ahead then, what are the critical near-term developments that you, the listener, should monitor to see how these crises unfold?
All right, first I'd say in Mali, keep a close eye on whether the government can successfully restore fuel supplies to allow schools to resume by that target date of November 10th.
Failure to meet that would be quite significant.
A very public admission, yes. The loss of control to JNIM on that front.
Second, in Niger, continue watching for any official updates from the U.S. State Department or Nigerian authorities regarding the status and hopefully potential rescue efforts for the kidnapped American missionary Kevin Rideout.
Third, we need to observe the real-world effectiveness of Nigeria's newly reshuffled military leadership. Can they actually confront these complex and, as we discussed, increasingly sophisticated threats posed by insurgents? Specifically, that new use of drone technology by Boko Haram, can they adapt quickly enough?
That will be key.
Definitely.
And finally, perhaps look for any potential AES security summits. Will they try to address these internal cooperation gaps that were exposed so clearly by Mali's crises?
Because the efficacy of their whole united force concept rests on demonstrated solidarity, not just, stated solidarity and communication. So we'll leave you with this final thought to consider. Given that JNIM is now leveraging these illicit economies, like the fuel blockade, not just for funding themselves, but actually to provide localized governance and services to communities, does this economic infiltration, this sort of state building from below, pose a greater, maybe longer-term threat to the stability of the Malian state than military conflict alone?
A provocative question indeed. That strategic pivot, where militants might be seen as outgoverning the state in some areas, certainly demands serious reflection.
It does.
Now, this in-depth news brief was synthesized using many traditional news sources, combined with data analysis from X, formerly Twitter, to provide this comprehensive and, we hope, balanced overview.
And for more AI-powered on-demand news and intelligence reports like this one, we certainly encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News. You can find that at www.stylonews.com.
Tone shifts to warm and friendly. And with that, thank you for tuning in to this deep dive. We genuinely appreciate you taking the time to stay informed on this critical and, frankly, complex region.
Yes, thank you for listening. Please do follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms as well.
We hope to have you with us for our next briefing. Goodbye for now.